The spaceport on Calorix Station never truly slept. Light from 1,000 glowing signs reflected off smooth metal floors, and voices from 100 different species blended into a constant, gentle hum. Ships arrived and left in slow, graceful patterns, like birds moving across a sky made of stars. In the middle of all this motion and noise walked a single human who looked very small compared to the towering aliens around him. His name was Elias Mercer. Elias was not a soldier, a hero, or anyone important in the eyes of the galaxy. He was a surveyor, someone who studied new trade routes and mapped safe paths between systems. His job was quiet and careful, just like him. He preferred watching and listening instead of speaking. While others rushed past, eager to make deals or show off their status, Elias moved at an easy pace, taking in every detail of the world around him. He had been on Calorix Station for 3 days, waiting for a cargo ship that would take him back toward human space. The delay did not bother him much. He liked stations like this. They were full of life, full of stories. Sometimes he imagined each traveler carried a small universe of their own behind their eyes. As he passed a row of food stalls that smelled of sweet steam and warm spices, Elias noticed something unusual. Most beings here walked with confidence, guided by maps glowing in their hands or floating in the air. But near the edge of a wide hallway, sitting on a low bench made of smooth stone, was a small figure who looked lost. She was not human. Her skin shimmered faintly, like soft light underwater, and her eyes were large and bright, reflecting the colors of the station. She wore a simple robe that seemed too fine for someone sitting alone in a public place. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, and she looked around with a quiet fear she tried very hard to hide. Elias slowed down. He told himself it was none of his business. Calorix Station was full of travelers. People got separated all the time. Security and guides were everywhere. Still, something about the way she kept glancing at passing crowds, as if expecting someone who never came, made his feet stop moving. He took a few careful steps closer. "Hello," Elias said, keeping his voice gentle. Are you okay?" The girl looked up at him, startled. For a moment, her eyes widened, and Elias wondered if he had made a mistake. Then she relaxed just a little. "I am not," she said softly. Her voice sounded like quiet music even when she spoke simple words. "I cannot find my guide. My communicator is broken." Elias glanced at the small device in her hand. The screen was dark, and a thin crack ran across it. "May I see it?" he asked. She hesitated, then held it out. Elias took it carefully, turning it over in his hands. It was clearly not made by human technology, but the basic idea was the same. Power, signal, connection. "I can't promise anything," Elias said, "but I might be able to help." He sat down on the bench beside her and pulled a small toolkit from his bag. It was old and scratched, something he had carried since his first job off Earth. Inside were wires, tiny tools, and a small power cell. The girl watched with great interest as Elias worked. "What is your name?" she asked. "Elias," he said. "And you?" She paused, then smiled. "Leora," Elias nodded. "Nice to meet you, Leora." As he carefully opened the communicator's casing, he noticed how different she was from most of the people on the station. Not just her appearance, but the way she held herself. Even while lost and worried, there was a calm strength about her, like someone who was used to being listened to. "Where are you trying to go?" Elias asked. "To the upper gardens," Leora said. "My people are waiting there." Elias smiled. "That's not too far. We can walk there if the communicator doesn't work." Leora's face brightened. "You would do that?" "Of course," Elias said. "No one should be lost in a place this big." He connected a small wire from his power cell to the communicator. The screen flickered, then glowed faintly. Leora let out a soft gasp. "It lives," she said, clearly impressed. Elias laughed quietly. "Let's see if it can still talk." He tapped a few buttons, guessing his way through the unfamiliar system. After a moment, a soft tone sounded. Leora's eyes filled with relief. "It works. Thank you, Elias." She held the communicator close, as if it were something very precious. Elias stood and offered a small, friendly gesture toward the wide hallway. "Shall we?" They walked side by side through the station. Leora looked around in wonder, even though she clearly came from a world far more beautiful and advanced than this place. She pointed at glowing signs, strange creatures, and ships passing by large windows. Elias found himself answering her questions, explaining things that seemed very normal to him but fascinating to her. He told her about Earth's oceans and skies, about how humans still used paper books and looked at stars without needing machines. "You sound proud of your people," Leora said. Elias thought about it. "I suppose I am. We're not the strongest or the oldest in the galaxy, but we try, we care." Leora smiled at that. As they reached a wide lift that would take them to the upper levels, Elias noticed something strange. A few tall figures in dark robes stood nearby, watching them. Their eyes followed Leora, not Elias. He felt a small chill, but he did not say anything. The lift doors opened and they stepped inside. The ride up was quiet. Leora held the railing and Elias stood beside her, both of them looking out at the station growing smaller below. "Elias," Leora said softly. "Why did you help me?" He shrugged. "You looked like you needed it." "That is all." "That's all," he said. When the lift doors opened, warm light poured in. The upper gardens were beautiful. Trees with glowing leaves reached toward a clear dome that showed the stars beyond. Soft paths curved through fields of floating flowers and gentle water streams. Leora took a deep breath. "This is it." They walked forward, and suddenly the air seemed to change. The quiet garden filled with movement. Tall, elegant beings in shining armor stepped forward, their eyes locked on Leora. Before Elias could react, they knelt. "My princess," one of them said, bowing low. "We have been searching for you." Elias froze. "Princess." Leora turned to him, her face full of surprise and a little embarrassment. "I was going to tell you," she said, "but it didn't seem important." Elias stared at her, then at the kneeling figures, then back at her. "You're a princess?" She nodded. Elias let out a slow breath and laughed softly. "Of course you are." The guards stood and looked at Elias with a mix of curiosity and respect. "Who is this human?" one of them asked. Leora smiled. "This is Elias. He helped me when I was lost. He fixed my communicator. He walked with me so I wouldn't be afraid." The guards exchanged looks. "You have our thanks," the lead guard said to Elias, bowing his head slightly. Elias felt very out of place. "I didn't do anything special," he said. Leora stepped closer to him. "You did," she said gently. "You treated me like a person, not a title." In the distance, Elias noticed more figures approaching, their presence calm but powerful. He sensed, without fully understanding why, that this moment would not end here. That something much larger had begun, simply because he had stopped to talk to a lost girl on a bench. As Leora was guided toward her waiting people, she looked back at Elias. "I hope I see you again, Elias, Mercer of Earth," she said. Elias raised a hand in a small wave. "I hope so too, Leora." He stood there in the glowing garden, watching as the alien princess disappeared into a group of shining figures, still trying to understand how a simple, quiet day at a space station had turned into something that felt like the start of a story the whole galaxy might one day tell. Elias did not sleep much that night. His small room on Calyrix Station felt quieter than usual, as if the walls themselves were waiting for something to happen. He lay on his narrow bed, staring at the soft blue light on the ceiling, replaying the moment in the garden over and over in his mind. A princess. A real one, and he had spoken to her like she was just another traveler who needed help finding her way. In the morning, a gentle chime sounded at his door. Elias sat up, confused. No one ever came to his room. He opened the door slowly, half expecting a station worker or a delivery drone. Instead, two tall figures in smooth, shining armor stood in the hallway. Their presence made the air feel heavy, like standing near a powerful machine. "Elias Mercer of Earth," one of them said, his voice calm and respectful. "You are requested at the Aurelian Embassy." Elias blinked. "Requested?" "Yes," the guard said. "The Queen wishes to meet you." Elias felt his stomach drop. The Queen. He nodded slowly, trying to look calmer than he felt. "All right, let me just grab my bag." The ride to the embassy passed in a blur. Elias watched the station slide by through the windows of a silent transport vehicle. People turned to stare as they saw who he was traveling with. Whispers followed him like shadows. The Aurelian Embassy was not like anything Elias had seen before. It looked less like a building and more like a piece of art shaped by light and crystal. Soft colors flowed across its walls, changing as if they were alive. The doors opened without a sound. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly sweet, like distant flowers. The floor reflected Elias' face back at him, making him feel even smaller than usual. He was led through wide halls and into a great room filled with gentle light. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat Queen Seraphil. She was tall and graceful, her skin glowing with the same soft light as Leora, but brighter and deeper, like the heart of a star. Her eyes were kind but powerful, the kind of eyes that had seen centuries pass. Leora stood beside her, wearing a fine robe that shimmered like morning light. Elias stopped a few steps away, unsure what to do. The guards knelt. Leora smiled at him. Queen Seraphil raised a hand. "You may stand, Elias Mercer," she said. Her voice was calm and clear, filling the room without being loud. "You are a guest here, not a subject." Elias swallowed and nodded. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The queen studied him for a long moment. Elias felt like she could see not just his face, but every thought he had ever had. "My daughter tells me you helped her when she was alone and afraid," the queen said. Elias nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty, her communicator was broken. I just fixed it and walked with her." "You did not know who she was," the queen said. "No," Elias said honestly. "I thought she was just lost." Leora laughed softly. The queen's lips curved into a small smile. "In our world, few would treat a royal child so simply. Many would seek favor, many would seek reward." "I wasn't looking for anything," Elias said. "I just didn't want her to be alone." A quiet sound moved through the room. The queen's advisors, tall beings with long robes and glowing markings, whispered to one another. Queen Seraphil raised her hand again, and silence returned. "Tell me about your people, Elias Mercer," she said. "Tell me about humans." Elias felt nervous, but he took a breath and spoke. He told her about Earth, about how humans once looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. About how they built ships not to conquer, but to explore. He spoke about small towns and crowded cities, about music and stories, about how humans argued and made mistakes, but still tried to do better. Leora listened closely, her eyes bright. The queen leaned forward slightly. "You speak with care for your kind," she said. "They're my people," Elias replied. "We're not perfect, but we try to help when we can." One of the advisors stepped forward. "Your species is young in the galactic circle. Many wonder what you seek among the stars." Elias thought about it. "I think we just want to belong," he said. "To learn, to make friends, to not be alone anymore." The room grew very quiet. Queen Seraphil looked at Leora, then back at Elias. "My daughter says you showed her courage," she said. "Not the kind that fights, but the kind that stays." Elias felt his face grow warm. "I don't feel very brave." "Few who are truly brave do," the queen replied. After a moment she stood. The light around her seemed to grow brighter. "Elias Mercer of Earth," she said. "You will stay on Calorix Station for a time. You will be our guest. There are things I wish to consider." Elias nodded, unsure what else to do. The days that followed felt like a strange dream. Elias was given a larger room, one with a wide window that showed the stars drifting past. He was allowed to walk freely through parts of the embassy and the station, though he noticed guards were never very far away. Word spread quickly. Aliens of all kinds began to approach him. Some asked about Earth, some asked about Leora, some simply wanted to see the human who had walked with a princess like she was a friend. Elias answered as best he could, always feeling a little awkward about the attention. One evening, Leora found him sitting in a quiet garden inside the embassy, watching glowing insects drift through the air. "You look lost again," she said, smiling. "Maybe a little," Elias admitted. She sat beside him. "My mother is speaking with many leaders about you." "About me?" Elias asked, surprised. "About what you represent," Leora said. "A human who helped without asking why." Elias looked at his hands. "I didn't think it meant anything big." Leora looked up at the stars through the glass ceiling. "Small things often become big things," she said. Later that night, Elias stood alone in his room, staring at a message screen. A short note from Earth glowed softly. His ship had been cleared to leave. He could go home. But another message appeared, this one marked with the symbol of the Aurelian Queen. He had been asked to attend a gathering the next day, a gathering of leaders from many worlds. Elias sat down slowly on the edge of his bed. He felt like he was standing on the edge of something he could not see, something wide and deep and full of stars. The next day, the great hall of the embassy filled with beings from across the galaxy. Colors, shapes, and voices blended into a quiet, powerful presence. Elias stood near the back, wishing he could disappear. Queen Seraphil rose to speak. "Today," she said, "we speak not of borders or power, but of connection." Her eyes moved across the room, then settled on Elias. "This human reminds us that the galaxy does not grow closer through treaties alone, but through simple acts of care." A soft murmur spread through the crowd. Elias felt every eye turned toward him. He took a slow breath, standing very still, wondering how a broken communicator and a walk through a station had brought him here. Somewhere in the crowd, Leora smiled at him. And in that moment, Elias realized that whatever the Queen was planning, it would not just change his life. It would change the path of his entire world. The great hall slowly emptied after the gathering, but the feeling of the Queen's words stayed in the air like soft light that refused to fade. Elias stood where he was for a long moment, watching leaders from distant worlds leave in quiet groups. Some glanced at him with curiosity, others nodded with respect. A few looked thoughtful, as if something inside them had shifted. He did not feel like someone who had changed anything. He still felt like the same quiet surveyor who liked maps and long walks through busy stations. Yet the way people now looked at him made him feel as if he had become part of a story much bigger than himself. Leora walked toward him, her steps light and calm. "You survived your first room full of galactic leaders," she said with a gentle smile. Elias let out a small laugh. "I think I'd rather face a broken engine than another speech like that." Leora's smile grew wider. "My mother has a way of making moments feel very large." As if on cue, Queen Seraphil approached them. The hall grew quieter around her, though she did not ask for silence. It simply followed her presence. "Elias Mercer," she said, "will you walk with me?" Elias nodded quickly. "Of course, Your Majesty." They moved through a side corridor that led away from the grand hall. The walls here were softer in color, glowing gently like dawn. The sounds of the crowd faded, replaced by quiet footsteps and the distant hum of the station. They entered a wide room filled with floating lights and long windows that showed a slow river of stars. In the center stood a circular table made of clear crystal. Symbols moved across its surface like living drawings. Queen Seraphil gestured for Elias to sit. Leora stood nearby, her hands folded calmly in front of her. "This is the Star Network," the Queen said, "or rather one doorway into it." Elias leaned forward, eyes wide. "I've heard of it, but I thought it was a story, a myth," the Queen smiled. "Many believe that. Only a few worlds have ever been invited to touch it." She placed her hand over the crystal table. The symbols changed, becoming images of stars, worlds, and glowing paths between them. "This network holds shared knowledge," she said. "Maps of safe travel. Records of peaceful meetings, ways to understand one another across language and form." Elias felt his breath catch. "Why are you showing me this?" The Queen looked at him, her eyes steady and warm. "Because I am considering showing it to your people." Elias froze. "To humans." "Yes," she said, "to Earth." Leora turned toward her mother, surprised. "You have never done this for a young world." "Until now," the Queen replied. Elias stood up slowly. "Your Majesty, I don't understand. I didn't do anything to earn something like this." The Queen's voice softened. "That is exactly why you did." She walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "Many species come to the galaxy seeking strength, seeking safety, seeking control, but you came seeking connection. You helped my daughter without knowing her name or her place." Elias thought of the bench, the broken communicator, the simple walk through the station. It felt small compared to what stood in front of him now. "What would this mean for Earth?" he asked quietly. The Queen turned back to him. "It would mean your people would no longer walk the stars alone. They would have guides, friends, a place at the table of old worlds." Elias felt a mix of excitement and fear twist inside him. That's too much for one person to carry back." "You would not carry it alone," the Queen said. "You would carry the first step." Leora stepped closer to Elias. "You helped me find my way," she said softly. "Now you can help your people find theirs." The room fell quiet. Elias closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of Earth. Of blue skies and oceans, of cities full of noise and laughter, of people who still looked up at the stars and wondered what waited beyond. "I'm just a surveyor," he said. The Queen smiled. "So was I once, long ago, before I wore a crown." She touched the crystal table again. A small object rose from its surface, glowing with gentle light. It was a crystal no larger than Elias' hand, filled with moving stars and lines of light. "This holds a key to the network," she said. "Not the whole of it, just the door." Elias reached out slowly, as if afraid it might disappear. When he touched it, the crystal felt warm. "This is your reward," the Queen said. "Not for you alone, but for your world." Elias swallowed. "What if we fail? What if we don't live up to this?" The Queen placed a hand over his. "Every world fails," she said. "What matters is that you try again. I believe humans will." News spread faster than Elias expected. By the time he returned to his room, messages from Earth were already waiting. Scientists, explorers, leaders. all asking questions, all wanting to understand what had happened. Elias sat on his bed, staring at the glowing crystal resting in a small case beside him. He felt very small. The next day, a ship arrived to take him home. It was not large or grand. Just a simple human vessel built for long travel and quiet work. Leora came to see him off. She stood at the edge of the docking platform, the light of the stars reflecting in her eyes. "I wish I could come with you," she said. "Maybe one day," Elias replied. "I think humans would like to meet you," she smiled. "I think they would." She reached out and placed a small, glowing token in his hand. "So you don't forget your first friend among the stars." Elias closed his fingers around it. "As if I could." Queen Seraphil watched from a distance. She raised her hand in a calm, respectful gesture as Elias boarded the ship. The journey back to Earth felt longer than any trip Elias had ever taken. He spent most of the time staring at the crystal, reading the simple guides the Queen had placed inside it. Messages about patience, about listening, about sharing, not taking. When the ship finally entered Earth's space, the blue curve of the planet filled the window. Elias felt a tightness in his chest. He landed at a quiet spaceport. News crews waited, officials waited, curious faces pressed against glass and screens. Elias stepped out, holding the case with the crystal. The world leaned in. In the days that followed, he spoke to leaders, scientists, and teachers. He showed them the doorway to the star network. He watched as humans reached out carefully like children touching water for the first time. Not everyone trusted it. Not everyone understood it. But many did. Slowly, messages began to flow between Earth and distant worlds. Greetings, questions, offers of shared study and peaceful travel. Elias often returned to a small hill outside the city at night. He would sit there and look up at the stars, thinking of Leora and the glowing gardens and the Queen's calm voice. One evening, his communicator chimed softly. A message from the Aurelian homeworld appeared. Leora's face filled the screen. "You did it," she said. "The stars feel closer already," Elias smiled. "I think they always were, we just didn't know how to reach them." As the message faded, Elias leaned back on the grass, watching the sky. He did not know what the future would bring. He only knew that it had begun with a simple choice to stop and help someone who looked lost. And now, because of that choice, the whole galaxy felt just a little more like home. Years passed, but the memory of that first glowing crystal never faded from Elias' mind. Earth changed slowly at first, like a river finding a new path. The star network did not flood the world with answers or sudden wonders. Instead, it opened doors one by one. Messages arrived from distant worlds, written in careful, friendly words. Maps of safe space lanes were shared. Ideas about farming in strange climates, healing methods, and ways to understand different languages began to flow across the stars. Humans listened. Elias often stood in quiet rooms filled with people from many nations, watching as teachers, scientists, and explorers spoke with beings who did not look or sound like them, yet shared the same questions. How do we grow without harming? How do we travel without fear? How do we live together in a universe that is so very large? Human ships began to travel beyond the old borders of known space, not as visitors demanding attention, but as guests carrying small gifts and open hands. They brought music from Earth, stories written in many languages, and pictures of oceans, forests, and cities glowing at night. Other worlds welcomed them, curious about this young species that did not arrive with armies or demands, but with simple greetings and quiet smiles. Elias no longer traveled as much. His work changed. Instead of mapping empty routes, he helped guide meetings. He helped explain human ways to alien minds and alien ways to human hearts. He never called himself important, even though many now did. One evening, he received a familiar message. Leora's face appeared on the screen, older now, her glow deeper and steadier, like a star that had learned its place in the sky. "You have been very busy, Elias Mercer of Earth," she said, smiling. "I could say the same for you, Princess Leora of the Stars," Elias replied. She laughed softly. "My mother wishes to see you, and so do I." The journey back to the Aurelian homeworld felt like stepping into a memory. The gardens still glowed. The air still carried that gentle warmth, but Elias noticed something new. Human ships were there, not many, just a few, resting quietly beside elegant Aurelian vessels. Their simple shapes looked small and plain next to the shining alien designs, yet they belonged there now. Leora greeted him at the platform, her smile bright. "You came," she said. I always do when you call, Elias replied. She led him through the glowing halls to the familiar room of floating lights and star-filled windows. Queen Seraphil waited there, her presence calm and strong as ever. Welcome home, Elias Mercer, the queen said. Elias paused. Home? The queen's eyes softened. Any place where you are trusted and cared for can be called that. They spoke for a long time. About how humans had grown into their place among the stars. About misunderstandings that had been solved through patience instead of anger. About small worlds that now traded peacefully because humans had helped them talk to one another. You have become what I hoped, the queen said. A bridge. Elias shook his head gently. We all became one, I just took the first step. Later, Elias walked alone through the upper gardens. The stars above looked brighter than he remembered. Or maybe he simply noticed them more now. He sat on a bench beneath a tree with glowing leaves, the same kind of bench where he had once found a lost girl with a broken communicator. Footsteps approached. A young Aurelian stood nearby, looking nervous. Are you Elias Mercer? Yes, Elias said, smiling. My name is Taryn, the young one said. I am a guide in training. I heard you help travelers. I was hoping you might help me. Elias' smile widened. What do you need help with? Taryn held up a small device. My translator keeps turning off. Elias laughed quietly and reached into his bag, pulling out his old, scratched tool kit. Let's take a look. As he worked, he felt a warm sense of something coming full circle. He was not a hero. He was not a legend. He was just someone who helped when he could. The galaxy began to change the way it spoke about humans. They were not called the strongest. They were not called the smartest. They were called the listeners, the walkers. The ones who sat beside you when you felt lost and stayed until you found your way again. On Earth, children grew up learning stories about distant stars and friendly worlds. They learned that the first human welcomed into the ancient network of space was not a general or a ruler, but a quiet surveyor who stopped to talk to a stranger. Elias grew older. His hair turned silver. His steps slowed. But he still liked to sit outside at night and look at the sky. One evening, a soft light appeared above him. A small Aurelian ship descended, landing gently in a nearby field. Leora stepped out, her presence calm and warm as ever. I thought you might be here, she said. Elias smiled. I usually am. They sat together, watching the stars. Do you ever regret it? Leora asked. That day on the station that you stopped. Elias thought for a moment. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I hadn't, but I don't regret it. Not for a second, Leora nodded. The galaxy is different because of you? It's different because of all of us, Elias said. They watched as a human ship crossed the sky, followed by an Aurelian one flying side by side. Leora stood. My mother asked me to give you something. She handed Elias a small crystal, similar to the first one, but this one glowed softly with many colors. What is it? Elias asked. A record, Leora said, of every world that joined the network after yours, of every meeting, every friendship, every shared path. Elias held it carefully. That's a lot to carry, Leora smiled. You've always been good at carrying big things in small hands. Elias laughed, his voice gentle and tired but happy. As the night grew quiet, Elias leaned back and looked up at the stars one last time. They no longer felt far away. They felt like neighbors, like distant lights in a very large town. Somewhere across the galaxy, beings who had never met a human were speaking words from Earth, singing songs from Earth, thinking of Earth as a place they could visit one day. And it had all begun with a simple choice. A human saw someone who looked lost, and instead of walking past, he stopped. Far beyond Earth and the Aurelian homeworld, scholars began to write a new saying, one that traveled from world to world through the star network. It went like this: Beware the species that does not seek power, for they may be worthy of all of it, but honor the species that seeks connection, for they will share it with the stars. Elias never heard those words spoken aloud. But if he had, he would have smiled, looked up at the sky, and said the same thing he always did when someone thanked him. I was just helping.